Welcome. My name's Alton. I'm going to be walking you through one of our tools that we use in our discipleship process. And so today I want to start with the triangle. And we use that in multiple situations and circumstances where we're trying to understand some things. And one of the first ones that we look at is this idea of if our life is meant to look like Jesus, meaning to be a disciple, to follow after him, to do the things that he did, to be a Christ follower, right? That whole concept, that whole understanding. If that's what we're looking at as an example of how we're supposed to live this thing out, the idea of when we ask that question, hey, what would Jesus do? Good question, not a bad question. The problem is it's always contextual in the sense of it's a circumstance, it's a decision. And what we really need to look at is what did Jesus do as we begin to think about how we're called to live our lives out. And so I want to look at this idea of a rhythm that Jesus sort of modeled. And then we're going to use, again, the triangle as the shape to sort of think our way through that. And there's primary three different expressions of this rhythm that we see. One is called the up. I'll explain that. The in and an out. All right? And so this is the pattern and rhythm that we see in Jesus' life, illustrated through his relationship with the disciples, the world around him, and his relationship with the Father. And we'll start with that at the very beginning. Is Jesus had an understanding that even as the God-man, a perfect man on this earth, still a need to connect with his Father. And we watch him over and over and over again, setting himself apart, stepping away from his disciples, stepping away from the crowds, that he wanted to connect with his Father, his up relationship with his Father. There was this level of intimacy that he was seeking and understanding and knowledge and hearing his voice. We watch this happen, that there's moments where when he goes and spends time with the Father, that he comes back down and there are literally crowds and crowds gathering around to hear him in his teaching in the gospel, and yet he decides to go to another place. And that comes directly after spending time with the Father. That's where we learn what he's calling and inviting us into most often. This is an important aspect of what we're all in need of, is connecting with our Father. And he would set himself apart. And then out of that place, often what you see him do is he goes and he spends time with what we would call our spiritual family. And so for him, he looked at this group of guys he called the disciples, those that were following him, as this spiritual family. He even redefines the nature of family. He's asked one moment by his brother, why would you do this to your mother and your brother? And he says, who are they? Who are my mother and brother? Those that do the will of God. And so he understood the need and the nature of our design to be in relationship. This kind of inward relationship, not in a negative sense, but an inward relationship where we would develop a family that is bigger than just biology, bigger than just a marriage, bigger than those things, that this family is there to help nurture each other as we try to pursue our relationship with the Lord. And so this was a rhythm that he practiced. This is something he modeled better than anyone else, actually. And then out of that place that he connected with the Father, he developed a spiritual family, but he also did not ignore the world around him. And out of that relationship with the Father and each other, they began to serve the world around them. They reached out, they served people, they met needs, they proclaimed the gospel. They didn't ignore the world around them, but it wasn't the only thing they did, and it wasn't the only measure of what it meant to live this life that we're called to. And so when we look at this rhythm of life that Jesus modeled best, what would Jesus do? I think better, what did Jesus do? And let's do that. And then we'll discover what he would do in each instance. What he did do is he spent time with his Father. He learned how to grow a family and develop that spiritually. But he also did not ignore the world. He was incredibly good at reaching people. He was really good at understanding how to meet needs. And so this is a rhythm that we all should be modeling. And so that's the challenge that we have. How am I living out the up, in, and out expression of Jesus' life?